Hello, and welcome to A Friend Remembers. Welcome to the Year of the JRPG, and welcome to a video that will answer the question, is it worth your time visiting and playing the game Persona 4? Well, the short answer is yes, it's absolutely worth your time. The big proviso here being, it will take a lot of it. This is an absolutely, truly massive game, but it's not one that outstays its welcome. It's not one that's ever going to bore you. It contains loads of different elements, loads of different gameplay loops and mechanics, all working seamlessly together to tell an absolutely amazing storyline that is worth experiencing. Combat-wise, this is a Japanese role-playing game. It's turn-based. You have a cast of up to 4 characters, but between your 4 characters, you all take a go, and then the enemy will take a go. But where it really excels as an excellent JRPG is it uses a system called One More, where if you can identify an enemy's weaknesses and use an attack that will bring that enemy down, then you get a second go. And for every different enemy you target that you knock down and weaken, you get sequentially more goes. Knock the entire set of enemies down and you can unlock a special attack that will really drive the damage home and give your team the advantage. The risk-reward mechanic here is that the enemy can do exactly the same. If they can identify your weaknesses, they can pulverize you. And so for the majority of this game, combat is really a tense, nail-biting experience as you're teasing the enemy's weaknesses out whilst protecting yourself. You're buffing yourself up. It's mechanically going to keep you engaged and keep you on your toes to make small and subtle changes. But that's just a small part of this game. Persona 4 isn't just about the combat, although I found it really rewarding to play through. This game is in large part a life simulator where you inhabit the role of a teenage schoolchild who's visiting the town of Inaba for a year, and you spend a year in the life of this protagonist. You assume their identity and you have to direct them on what they're going to do in each afternoon or in each evening. Who are you going to hang out with? Where are you going to work? Who are you going to save? What part of the story are you going to prioritize? The theme of the Persona series is about relationships. It's about you building close and solid bonds with a cast of characters around you. Now, the town of Inaba is a rural district on the outskirts of Japan. The cast isn't that large. There's not that many characters for you to interact with. But they're quite diverse, they're quite varied. They all have lots of interesting things. All of them have weird and strange stuff going on in their lives and problems that they need help dealing with. So you can decide which of them you feel the most connected to, which ones you want to build these bridges to. Prioritize your time to spend with them, help them get through their personal struggles, and emerge as a more solid friendship group and a combat effective unit. The more solid your bonds in the real world, the more effective your combat is in the imaginary world behind the television, where the combat of this game takes place. So despite there being a very solid line between combat and fighting takes place in the imaginary world, whereas you spend your day living in the real world, there is solid links where what you do in one world will have a direct implication on what you do in the other. Characters in the real world will often send you on side quests or hunt down items which you can only recover from the imaginary place. The storyline that you're playing through is in fact a murder mystery. Coinciding with your arrival in this town, there are a series of brutal murders, and the father who's taken you in is in fact a detective. He's actually trying to keep you at arm's length from this case, but by a series of shenanigans you discover that you, fairly uniquely, have the power to enter the TV. You discover quite quickly that the way these murders were carried out was that someone has thrown these people into the television screen. They've been killed by the shadows on the other side of the TV, and the police are never going to catch this culprit because they don't understand the way these murders were carried out. And throughout the course of the year, several more people are going to be kidnapped. They're going to be put at risk because if they're behind the TV when the fog descends on the town, they're due for a grisly fate. So you and a team of teenage misfits have to band together to act as heroes to stop these assassination attempts, to try and save people's lives, and ultimately find out who's behind this, who's conducting these murders. I won't want to spoil the storyline at all, but the revelation of who's behind this, what's going on, is absolutely brilliantly put together. It's nail-biting stuff, and the revelations as they come in the latter half of the game really turn the game on its head, but it all fits together really neatly. It's one of the best murder mystery stories I've seen or played through in years. I would urge you, however, caution. If you're playing through the game, one of its most difficult aspects is managing this life simulator, because a year isn't actually that long. You will unlikely have time to spend as much as you want with everyone. You're going to have to prioritize the characters you care about the most, and it is theoretically possible to get a completion single playthrough, but it's going to be very, very difficult. And if you decide to use a walkthrough to try and help you, and there are various points where you'll be stuck, unable to progress unless you know exactly who you need to talk to or what you need to do, you may resort to looking to a walkthrough to help you along. And that's really dangerous because these online guides can spoil who the murderer is really easily. Be careful with that. I would recommend playing through this game blind. I would recommend not worrying too much about getting absolute completion, not worrying about seeing everything it has to offer. Just enjoy yourself. Just live your life. It will still take about 60 or 70 hours just to work through the storyline, to watch all the cutscenes. It's really well told. It does have some elements of Japanese anime. It stars a majority of the cast are teenage misfits, and it's actually really important to the storyline that that's what they are. A lot of the characters' personal revelations when you go into the other world, and it reveals the darker parts of their psyche. For a lot of the early dungeons, there's an extremely sexual theme to what's going on, because these are characters going through that teenage awakening. The game does start to branch out and touch on some other more adult themes later on, but for the first half of the game it's got a very sexual edge to it in the way the dungeons are laid out and who and what the bosses represent. Usually quite tastefully done, but the Japanese anime inspiration and theming rears its head every now and then. Cliches and stereotypes of the gender, which feel a little bit aged and dated, and if you don't have much tolerance for Japanese anime, will probably disturb you a little bit. It's not too intrusive. I think the game largely has the right intentions. If you know the inspiration where this game is coming from and what the genre is usually like, you kind of know what to expect here. There are just a few really clunky scenes. I can kind of forgive it because this game is about a teenage cast of characters who haven't figured out, they're not adults yet, they haven't really figured out how to behave and what is socially acceptable. The game never really crosses a line for me that is completely abhorrent, but it's worth bearing in mind that other people's tolerance for this stuff will vary. That is my absolute only complaint about the storytelling though. The combat is top notch. The murder mystery is brilliantly put together, and if you put the time and energy into investing in this, you will really care about the cast of characters. The population of Inaba, they're by and large wonderful people, and it's a pleasure to spend time with them and help them through the crisis of the year. So, should you play Persona 4? It's readily accessible now on modern consoles. The remastered port, Persona 4 Golden, has been released on all the modern consoles and PC, so it's never been easier to get hold of this game. When it originally came out, it was one of the last ever big hurrahs of the PlayStation 2, so it was built for one of the most popular video game consoles of all time, but by the time it came out, the PlayStation 3 was several years into its lifespan. So I do think there's an element of this game got really overlooked by the general public when it first came out. It was massively popular for the people in the know, but for the wider community, you may have heard of Persona 5, that's now the de facto most famous game in the series. But it really shocked me how much Persona 5 borrows from Persona 4. And Golden just contains all the stuff that the original game did, with an extra dungeon, with a couple of new characters and a couple of new social links. I wouldn't say they're essential. In fact, the new dungeon may be the weakest part of the game, but as an overall package, it's absolutely fantastic. The music is bright and upbeat and vibrant, and just makes you feel really glad to be alive in this virtual world. I can highly recommend this game to anyone who considers it.